Yeah. Let's go. We just gotta go hard. I go the hardest. I bring the pain. Not what you used to. It's all part of the game. Yeah, I just gotta go hard. I just gotta go hard.
Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of the Wheels Off Podcast, episode number 9. Hey, my name is Kay Wheeler, and thank you for joining me for this episode. Hey, this week's song that you just heard is Go Hard by Wes Harris. So scan the QR code there. It'll take you to his YouTube link. You can check out some of his material like I always do every week. I try to highlight a new and up-and-coming artist, and I want to make sure that we give them the love. So here's what we got going this week on the episode. First of all, we got a lot of week 4 stuff, the beginning of most conference play in the Sims college football section. We also get to look at week 4 of the SimNFL. Yeah, we saw the pretenders start to fall away. The Hard Luck Eagles had another tough loss this week, and we keep seeing the explosive AFC North kind of playing and controlling the way things are going right now, and some big games coming up. So we'll talk about the big 3, the Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night games this week. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the trades that are going on as well. So let's go ahead and get into this. When it comes to college football, what's happening to Alabama? National title team last year. I noticed that they switched last week before the game from pro to spread. That was probably the big reason why they got absolutely just blanked last week, dealing with the scheme change penalty. And then this weekend, we got USC traveling to South Bend, Indiana to play Notre Dame. And who's going to win the Jeweled Shillelagh? That is the traditional trophy between those two. So let's see what happens with them. And then what is the easiest job in college football? I'll let you think on that one for just a second. I'm going to tell you right now, it's the punter for the Tennessee Volunteers. He had absolutely nothing to do last week. 0 punts. 0. Nothing. Full ride scholarship, and the kid gets to skate by not having to hardly punt at all. And then on the NFL side, the entire AFC North is above 500. In fact, they're 8-0 against everybody else in the league. If you're not paying attention to the AFC North, and I remember back in the preseason show, I told you Cincinnati is going to be tough. They have a stretch coming up here, I believe, starting this week or next week, where they have like 6 or 7 games against some of the top teams in the NFL. This is really going to give them an idea of where they stand in anything and how the AFC North is playing out. And then a lot of trade activity, like we talked about, between the Titans and 49ers. We saw Denver trade a couple times. We saw Pittsburgh pick up a wide receiver from Minnesota. A lot of things going on there. And is this because a lot of teams that we thought were going to be doing really well are starting to panic now? Because it's game 4 and they have like 2-2, 1-3, 0-4. Not understanding that there's 13 more games to go and they could probably turn their season around and make the playoffs. Or are they just going to tank? And then finally, poor Philadelphia, week 4, another 1-point loss, a total of 4 games by 15 points. I feel sorry for my brothers from another mother over there in Philly. Tough one. Are they going to tank, or are they going to figure it out and do like I did last year and go from 0-4 to make the playoffs? You never know. They could knock off the defending Super Bowl champion Washington Commanders once, maybe twice. We'll wait and see how they get that figured out. But let's go ahead and get into week 4 review and see what's going on. So our folks on Spotify, I'm going to kind of talk through this to help them out. I know those folks on YouTube, you're like, why is he talking through this? But here are the top 10 games we had last week. If you were on the left side of the ampersand, that means you were the visiting team. 8 out of the 10 visiting teams won last week. Troy State upset Georgia State 13-3. On Thursday night, we saw number 22 Florida State travel up to Boston College Saturday morning, win 27-6. Notre Dame traveled down to the ACC team, Wake Forest. Number 8, Notre Dame won 42-24 over number 15, Wake Forest. Number 23, Texas traveled down to Lubbock, Texas, and beat Texas Tech 24-10. Oklahoma traveled to Morgantown, West Virginia. Number 7, Oklahoma wins 23-17 over the Mountaineers. And then number 1, Tennessee. We talked about them a little bit earlier. travels down to Gainesville, Florida, to go play in the Swamp, go play in the home of Gatorade and the Florida Gators, and comes away victorious 45-21. Savage had a monster game. In fact, I think all his receivers had monster games, and the punter had an even bigger game. He never even touched the field. So you get a chance to go look at that play-by-play, go look at that. And then Kansas travels down to Fort Worth to play number 3 Texas Christian and loses 12-27. And then UCLA travels all the way up to play the upstart Oregon State Beavers in Corvallis at Reser Stadium. Crowd can get kind of rowdy. I know how those Beaver fans can get. Number 13 UCLA comes away victorious 42-30. Amazing game. Great stuff. We'll talk about Hiram Morande here in a little bit too when we get to the players of the week, but he had a monster game. And then Stanford had to travel down to LA and lost 17-24 to number 2 USC. Longacre had a solid game. Nothing like Morande, but a very solid game. And then number 14 California traveled up to Utah and played a Saturday night game against Utah Utes. And it was close, but California comes away 17-16 against the Utes. But like I go back to said before, it comes out to who you've played. And we're starting to see he's playing good teams and winning against good teams. Maybe he deserves the ranking. We'll kind of go from there. So let's get an offensive player week. We already talked about it. Hiram Morande, the senior quarterback from UCLA, leads the Bruins over the Oregon State Beavers 42-30, 19 for 28 for 297, 4 touchdowns. Spectacular. But then he adds 13 carries for 102 yards and another touchdown. Human highlight reel is what this guy is. He touches the ball, he's going to score. It's 5 touchdowns. As of Monday at 2:50 p.m. West Coast time, currently leading defensive player of the week would be Florida State's redshirt freshman defensive tackle Colton Rankin. 7 tackles, 3 tackles for losses, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. If you're not voting for this kid, I don't know who you're voting for, because a redshirt freshman putting up those numbers, I feel sorry for the ACC for the next couple of years having to deal with this kid. All right, so let's go ahead and get to the top 10 games of the week to watch for week 5. Kind of a mismatch, but most of the important games are out west. Starting off Thursday night, I always like to try to put a Thursday night game in. We can see Georgia Southern travel down and take on Texas State down there in Frisco. On Friday night, we get to see the upstart James Madison travel to go play the upstart Troy State on Friday night. And then Saturday morning, we see number 10 Tulsa fly out to East Carolina to take on the South Carolina, comes into Knoxville to try to take out number 1 Tennessee. On Saturday afternoon, Oklahoma State travels down to Texas, down there to Austin on Saturday afternoon as well. We get to see Georgia at Auburn Saturday evening. And then the game everybody should be paying attention to, number 2 USC at number 8 Notre Dame Saturday evening. You should be on watching this game. I know it's tough for some of the people to keep track of all these games, but there's some new channels on Discord. If you've noticed, the Sim College Football has FCS and FBS channels along with an NFL channel now, so it's a little bit easier to find things and I have to wade through 800 games that don't apply to you. But number 2, Southern Cal at number 8, Notre Dame, Saturday evening for the Joel Shillelagh. Right now, I've got it highlighted in red because I think Southern Cal is going to win this game. But you know what? I don't know. I think UCLA is the better LA team right now. But I think Southern Cal's defense is going to be a little too strong for Notre Dame. But you know what? You're talking about the Holy Rollers up there with touchdown Jesus looking over the field. So you never know what's going to happen. And later that night, we get to see Boise State, number 19 Boise State, travel down to San Diego State to take on Pump and his Aztecs. Tuscansoda's Washington State Cougars travel down to UCLA and play Saturday night, go see if they can try to rein in Hiram Morande a little bit. And then Oregon State's going to be playing in Boulder in Colorado against the Colorado Buffaloes. So far, Colorado has been putting up some amazing amounts of points and yardage. So let's go ahead and get into the SimNFL stats for players and teams right now. As you can see, Philip Avila from the Rams has put up 1,904 yards, 14 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, still leads in the passing category. Ronnie Jefferson from Cincinnati overtakes John Knighton this week, racks up 694 yards and 6 touchdowns through 4 weeks. I'll tell you right now, as the Titans, our game plan was not to run Knighton a lot, knowing that Houston was going to probably stack the box. So we took advantage other ways, between Sprouse and Wright having good games, I think. And obviously our tight end had a great game too. And then receiving. For once, it is a receiver that played somebody other than my team. We were able to shut down Houston's passing game other than one 51-yard pass. But the Raiders, let me say that right, the Raiders, James Black from Vegas, 681 yards and 5 touchdowns through 4 weeks. And then defensively, we see Andrew Basque, the inside linebacker from Buffalo, knock off Williams out of the top tackles position with 31 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss. And then William May edges out Baltimore's defensive end last week. New England's defensive end, 16 tackles, 4 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 1.5 tackles per loss, more than the previous winner. That's why he is now the leader here. And then Herbert Ferguson, he still leads interceptions with 8. He got those in the first 2 games of the year. Kind of came out a little too early, too hard, too strong. Kind of like, a teenage boy on his first date, I guess. But I expect to see that pick up here because right now the AFC North 8-0 against everybody else, 2-2 versus themselves. So it's going to be real interesting to see how these play out. But these are your individual player stats leaders through week 4. And then team-wise, total offense, Tennessee's still out there at 2,154 yards. It's getting closer. We put up some passing yards this week, kind of laid back the running a little bit, which shows in the rushing offense now being Washington Commanders with 964 yards and 11 touchdowns. And then passing, still the Los Angeles Rams. I don't think they ever don't throw the ball. I think they constantly are throwing the ball. And then defensively, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they were at 111 last week for rushing yards against. They only gave up 73 yards this week. So they're at 184 after 4 weeks. And pass defense, we see the San Francisco 49ers overtake Green Bay and now have the lowest passing total against them at 675 yards after 4 games. And then for turnovers, Cincinnati and the Chargers are both tied at 12 turnovers apiece. So just a quick note. I know we're just noticing Discord here just a moment ago. I'm going to kind of roll back up here a little bit for just a second. When we get to the Associated Press, and I know you've seen me say this before, and I'll say this again, grabbing the new microphone. We need people voting in the AP poll, and it needs to be done hopefully by, let's say, 4 o'clock East Coast time on Monday. The reason why is because I work now Tuesdays through Saturday, and I go to work at 3 a.m. in the morning. Not get up at 3 a.m., go to work at 3 a.m. So I need to be in bed by 6 o'clock the night before so I can be up somewhere between midnight and 1. So if you please take the time, go vote in the AP poll, make it as accurate as possible. And hopefully here in a moment, I will be able to talk more about that. All right. So let's get to the 3 big games this week for SimNFL. Week 5 on Thursday night, we have the 3-1 Las Vegas Raiders traveling over to SoFi Stadium to play the 1-3 Los Angeles Chargers. Anytime you get a rivalry game inside your conference playing, it's always going to be a big one. And then we have the 2-1-1 Detroit Lions traveling down to play the 2-2 Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football. And then the game everybody is probably going to be talking about this week is the 4-0 Denver Broncos traveling to Nashville to play my Tennessee Titans, who are also 4-0. So it's going to be really interesting. Both of us made moves this last week to try to strengthen our team. I know Denver is making a hard push to get into the Super Bowl and win this time. And being an AFC team, I would love to see an AFC team win this. I'm just not sure it's going to be him. But making moves to counter each other and to one-up each other. We see a lot of things going on, but Denver versus Tennessee this Sunday night. Where to find the Simulation Football Association? You can find us at www.simFBA.com, or you can join our Discord here. The identifiers are at the end of that for those people on YouTube. For those people listening on Spotify, Apple Music, or any of the other, I will put the links in the descriptions below for you. And where to find the Wheels Off podcast? Like I said, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Podcast Addict, Pocket Casts, Deezer, Player FM, and the Podcast Index. In addition to our link on wheelsoffpodcast.buzzsprout.com. You can play our episodes right there using the player as well. Thank you for listening to the Wheels Off Podcast. Remember to review and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. And if you took something away from today's conversation, find a friend and share the message. And we will see you on the flip side.
That's all, folks.